Using the power of electricity, we are able to turn a dull aluminium ring into a shiny gold ring through a process called electroplating. Even though it feels like alchemy or witchcraft, it is surprisingly simple. In this video, we will explore what electroplating is, how it works, and what we use it for. First, let's define what electroplating even is. It is the process of using electricity to coat a layer of metal onto another metal, or even plastic. This process is quite simple, consisting of an electrical source connecting to an anode and cathode, both dipped in an electrolyte. The cathode is the metal that you want to plate, while the anode is the metal that wants to be plated onto the cathode. The electrolyte is a gel or liquid that contains ions of the anode and conducts electricity well. So for example, if you want to plate a brass sword in copper, the sword will be a cathode, a copper chunk will be the anode, and the electrolyte will be a liquid solution containing copper, such as copper sulfate. As electricity starts to flow, the copper, or anode, becomes positively charged, while the brass, or cathode, becomes negatively charged. Furthermore, as the electrolyte becomes charged, it separates into the ions of its components. In this case, the copper sulfate separates into copper and sulfate ions, with the copper ions being positively charged and the sulfate ions being negatively charged. Since the opposite charges attract, the negative sulfate ions bind to the positive copper, releasing an electron in the process, while the positive copper ions bind to the negative brass, coating it with a thin layer of copper. This process can be done for plastics too, but it needs extra steps since plastic doesn't conduct electricity well. So instead, it needs to be thoroughly cleaned first, getting rid of any dust and dirt. Then, it needs to be coated by some acids, making them sticky. Next, it is dipped inside a copper or nickel bath, making the plastic conductive. This coating is very thin, usually thinner than 1 micrometer, and now it is ready to be electroplated. The speed of electroplating depends on the voltage and the concentration of the electrolyte, but it works with a lot of metals. As for applications, electroplating can be used for both decoration and protection. For example, most of the gold jewelry isn't actually made of solid gold, as that would be pretty expensive and heavy. Instead, a lot of them are made with aluminium and electroplated by a gold anode to give it a golden look. Some materials, such as the nylon string on a guitar, are just plastic coated in metal as well. Other than for decorations, electroplating can also combine properties of two metals, sort of like an alloy, but not quite, since making an alloy involves mixing metals together, while electroplating is just coating a metal with another. For example, the trims of a car wheel are usually made of steel, but they are coated with chromium to make them more resistant to rusting and shinier. And there we have it. Electroplating is the process of coating a metal or plastic with a different metal for decorative or protective purposes. This works by running an electric current through the metals in an electrolyte, with the ions from the electrolyte coating the cathode while releasing electrons from the anode, forming an electric circuit. I hope that y'all have learned something interesting today. Thank you for watching, and stay hydrated.